Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's live reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are reading from Canto 1, and at the moment we are on chapter 18. It's Parikshit Cursed. On a hunting expedition, Parikshit, afflicted by thirst, uncharacteristically insults a meditating in sage and is cursed to die in 7 days by the sage's son. Chapter 18, verses 5 to 8. Sutta Goswami said, "Thus did the intelligent King Parikshit deal with Kali, who had entered the world on the very day Krishna departed. He felt no antagonism toward him because he knew the Lord had arranged special concessions in Kali's age." Intrigued, Shaunak asked what these were. So let us find out the special concessions given in the Kali Yuga to all the beings. In this age, one has only to think of a pious act in order to reap its benefit. But sinful acts must be performed before one gets any reaction. So just by thinking of a pious act, one gets the piety or the punya. But the sin, if one thinks of a sin, that won't give the sinful reaction. But if that sin which is thought is performed, then one gets the reaction. This is wonderful, agreed Shaunak. But sadly, people's sinful thoughts can soon become their acts. Now, that is the caveat. "This is wonderful," he said. "Indeed," replied Sutta, "but there is another great advantage of Kali Yuga. Merely by hearing and chanting about Krishna, one can purify his mind and achieve complete liberation." Knowing this, King Parikshit widely propagated the chanting of Krishna's name and glories. His citizens were thus protected from Kali's influence. Only those who foolishly neglect Krishna's service need fear Kali. Shaunak remarked, "It is astonishing that such a great king was cursed by a Brahman. What did he do on hearing about the curse?" Chapter 18, verses 1 to 3. Sutta replied, "Since Parikshit had full faith in Krishna, who saved him even as an unborn child, he accepted the curse as the Lord's auspicious arrangement. Unafraid of death, he left everything and became Shukadev's disciple. Under his guidance, the king was able to attain Krishna's association at the time of death." Shaunak marveled at how Parikshit saw the Lord's merciful arrangement in such apparent reversal. He asked how one can cultivate such a disposition. Chapter 18, verses 4 and 9 and 10. Sutta said, "Those who dedicate their lives to systematically hearing about Krishna, who performs wonderful acts, will always remember him. Even at the moment of death, they will not fall victim to fear, which is born of ignorance." Sutta paused and looked around the assembly of attentive sages. "As you did ask me, so I have related to you the pious history of King Parikshit. He perfectly demonstrates the great benefit of hearing about the Lord. Now what more do you wish to know?" Chapter 18, verse 12. The sages were delighted by Sutta's clear explanation. They had started the day feeling anxious because they knew their fire sacrifices were inadequate to save people from Kali Yuga. Now they felt cheerful. So in Kali Yuga, hearing about the Lord has got a lot of power, and one can get the completely purify one's mind by hearing and chanting about the Lord. Now they felt cheerful, reassured that hearing about Krishna was the solution they sought. Chapter 18, verse 11. One sage called out, "O sober-minded Sutta, we are indebted to you. May you live long and achieve everlasting fame, for you are describing Krishna's activities, which are the elixir of immortality for mortals like us. Chapter 18, verses 13 to 17. Another said, Dear Sutta, the value of associating with a devotee of your caliber is inestimable. No material gains can compare even attaining heaven or liberation. Indeed, those who seek such things only condemn themselves to repeated birth and death. The intelligent never tire of hearing discourses about Govinda, which bestow the highest benefit. Another sage added, We are now convinced Krishna is greater than even Brahma or Shiva. He alone protects all living beings, therefore the wise constantly hear about him. Shaunak requested Sutta to repeat Shukadev's instructions to Parikshit, hearing which the king had attained Krishna's personal association at the time of death. Chapter 18, verses 18 to 23. Sutta withdrew into himself for a few moments. Then with all humility he replied, My dear Shaunak, you and the sages here are godly brahmanas, but I am a low-class person. Therefore, somehow or other, I received the good fortune of hearing from the great Shukadev. By his association I have been purified, and by chanting the name of the unlimitedly powerful Lord, the disqualification of my degraded birth has been destroyed. Thus you have accepted me in your midst. Sutta paused, tears flowing down his cheeks as he thought of his spiritual master's mercy. The sages sat in respectful silence as he continued. How can one describe the glories of Krishna, who is the worshipful Lord of Shiva and Brahma? The water that washed his toenail purifies the very universe. Those attached to him can immediately give up this world to attain life's highest perfection, thereby becoming completely peaceful and renounced. It is impossible to fully delineate Krishna's glory. But as birds fly in the limitless sky, Shaunak entreated Sutta, Pray describe to us the circumstances culminating in Parikshit's surrender to Shukadev. Sutta agreed, Yes, I will tell you everything about this. So it's very interesting that the analogy given about the birds flying in the limitless sky to the limit of their power. And similarly, Shukadev says that he will describe, to repeat what he has heard. And this is how our enthusiasm and our spirit in the movement of Srila Prabhupada should be to preach about Krishna. That in this limitless world, which is quite limitless to us because our abilities are only, our strength and ability is only limited. So we should try our best what we can do to repeat what we have learnt or we have heard. Sutta agreed, yes, I will tell you everything about this. Sorry, it's not Shukadev, it's Sutta. Sutta, he said that he will repeat what he has heard. He will try his best. Chapter 18, verses 24 to 31. Parikshit rose before sunrise, as was his habit. After performing his daily worship, he left on a hunting expedition at the crack of dawn. It was a particularly hot and humid morning. By mid-morning, the king was extremely thirsty and fatigued. While searching for a reservoir of water, Parikshit came upon a hermitage of the well-known sage Shamik. The king found him seated with his eyes half closed in meditation. The emaciated sage wore only a loincloth. He had unkempt matted hair and was sat upon a deerskin. Parikshit could just make out the barely audible intonation of the sacred syllable Om. Normally, out of respect for the meditating sage, the king would have left at once, but today, impelled by his burning thirst, he announced his presence. I am King Parikshit, your humble servant. I come to offer respects and to request your hospitality. Pray allow me to take a little water. Parikshit prostrated himself before the sage, who did not acknowledge his presence nor even move slightly. Rising, Parikshit again addressed him. Great sage, there is no need for a mere king to instruct a learned Brahmana like yourself. Surely you are well aware of the scriptural injunction that a guest should at least be received with sweet words, water, and a place to sit. So this is the least hospitality everybody is expected to do. Even the poor of the poorest can do this for a guest. Therefore, although I am of a lower caste, I seek your hospitality. Still the sage stayed silent. Parikshit scowled and looked around the small bare hut. There was a clay water pot in the corner, but Parikshit did not want to take it without permission. He felt irritated that Shamik did not say anything. Convinced the sage was feigning trance just to avoid receiving a guest of lower order of life. Tired, thirsty, and feeling insulted, he strode out of the hut. Near the entrance, he saw a dead snake. Impelled by destiny, he picked it up with the end of his bow and placed it around the sage's neck as if it were a garland. He felt this was a fitting response for the cold reception Shamik had given him. As he rode back toward the capital, Hastinapur, he began to regret his rash act. Had the sage really been pretending? It seemed unlikely. The king feared he had made a grave mistake. He had foolishly insulted a saintly person even as he was engaged in his holy meditations. Parikshit was struck by remorse. How had he allowed anger to overcome him? Greatly troubled in mind, the king entered his capital, where crowds of joyous people thronged the streets to greet him. Chapter 18, verses 32 to 50. A young boy had witnessed the entire incident. He had curiously approached the sage's hut after seeing the king's horse nearby. When the king left, the boy ran to his friends to tell them what had happened. Among the youths were the sage's son, Shringi. Infuriated by the insult afforded to his father, Shringi, breathing heavily, criticized the king with harsh words. My father, the great sage Shamik, has been insulted by a low-class member of the administrative caste. How could that lowly king have dared to do such a thing? With furrowed brow, the immature boy, proud of his status as a sage's son, declared that Kshatriyas were always meant to serve the Brahmanas. Just see the sinful behavior of the so-called royal order. They should not even enter Brahmana's house uninvited. They are merely watchdogs and as such should remain obediently at the door. The king has severely transgressed religious principles. Shringi had been educated by his father and knew the religious codes in the symbolic societal body. Brahmanas were compared to the head. The rulers, or the Kshatriyas, were the protective arms. It seems that the departure of Lord Krishna, the upstart kings have forgotten their positions, Shringi said. Well, I shall deal with this matter myself. By his birth and training, Shringi had the power to deliver curses. Thus, his eyes blazing red in self-righteous fury, he uttered an imprecation. On the 7th day from today, a snake bird will bite the wretch of a king, Parikshit, due to his breaking the laws of etiquette by insulting my father. As he thundered out these words, Shringi touched the sacred waters of the nearby river Kaushiki, but even as he finished speaking, he at once felt remorse. What would his father say? The boy had never seen him display anger toward anyone. Would he have cursed the king in such a way? He ran toward his father's hut to tell him what he had done. So the remorse was felt by the king, and now the remorse was felt by the son of Shamik sage. The son is Shringi. So it's all destiny playing its, what should we say, the happenings. As Shringi entered the hermitage, he saw his father still sitting in silent meditation with the snake around his shoulders. The sight compounded his sorrow arising from regret, and he cried out loudly. Hearing him wail in this way, Shamik slowly opened his eyes. Seeing the dead snake around his neck, he nonchalantly threw it aside and asked his son what was the matter. Trying to justify himself, Shringi explained, "Dear father, you were grievously insulted by Parikshit with that snake. I have therefore cursed him to die in 7 days." Shamik's eyes opened wide in horror. "What have you done? A king should never be cursed. Alas, you have awarded heavy punishment for an insignificant offense." So how great was Shamik sage's character, that he regarded the throwing of the dead snake around his neck by Parikshit as an insignificant offense. Shringi hung his head in shame as his father went on. "My boy, you are inexperienced. You do not know that the king is never to be considered an ordinary man. He is God's representative and therefore has the right to punish if he sees fit. The state prospers and remained peaceful only due to the prowess of a capable king like Parikshit. By killing him, you will leave the world vulnerable to every kind of criminal. People will be killed and injured, women violated, animals harmed. Complete chaos will ensue. For all this, we, the Brahmanas, will be to blame." Shringi said nothing. He knew he was at fault. His father had many times instructed him in the importance of controlling anger. Shamik continued, "Emperor Parikshit is a pious and celebrated king. He is a great patron of religion and a man of staunch faith in the Supreme. When such a person is stricken with thirst and fatigue and then neglected, he does not at all deserve to be cursed." Shamik knew Parikshit would not retaliate against the wrong done to him. Krishna's devotees were so forbearing that even when defamed, cheated, cursed, or attacked, they are never inclined to avenge themselves. Still, the sage feared the Lord's displeasure for the offense against his devotee. The karmic reaction for cursing a great personality like Parikshit would afflict the entire Brahminical order, causing them to fall from their high principles. If that happened, the society will be ruined. Gradually, the world would become like hell. The sage prayed to Krishna to forgive his thoughtless son. And thus ends the chapter 18, Parikshit Cursed. Lots of lessons to be learned from this reading. And we can't thank enough Krishna Dharma Prabhu and Chintamani Mataji for their brilliant effort in putting the chapters, the shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam in so easy to understand narrative. So we'll start the chapter 19 next time, and it is the last chapter of Canto 1. So thank you for joining in today's reading. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.